I met who I thought was my soulmate during our final semester at university. It was at Tom's house party. He was a mutual friend who lived off campus. She walked in with some friends, and within minutes we were deep in conversation about everything from our career plans to our favorite hiking trails. I was immediately drawn to her warm personality and the way she could make anyone feel comfortable. I'll admit I was surprised when she seemed interested in me. While I kept myself fit and healthy, I was always the quieter one in social situations. She, on the other hand, lit up every room she entered. She had this natural confidence that drew people to her, and somehow, she chose me. We clicked instantly. That first night turned into daily text messages, which turned into weekly dates. After graduation, I landed a job in finance while she pursued her career in corporate law. A year later, we moved in together in Seattle. Everything felt perfect. Our friend groups merged naturally. We went on amazing vacations together, and her family welcomed me as one of their own. Well, except her father, but according to her mother, he was distant with everyone. 2.5 years of pure happiness later, I proposed. She said yes, and I felt like the luckiest person alive. She took charge of planning our wedding, and we spent countless evenings discussing our future. The house we'd buy, the family we'd start, the places we'd travel together. But things started changing subtly after the engagement. At first, it was so minor I almost missed it. She became distant one evening a week, then 2, then 3. Having spent too much time listening to relationship advice videos online, I started paying more attention. The pattern became clear. She would be completely disconnected for a few hours, then suddenly bounce back to her normal, loving self. Things came to a head during Thanksgiving at her parents' home in Portland. We lived in Seattle, so we'd made the drive down. That's when I noticed her being cold toward me in front of her mother, something she'd never done before. Her mother, always perceptive, pulled her aside for a conversation. I couldn't make out what they were saying, but their voices were raised. When they returned, everyone acted like nothing had happened. Later, when I asked her about it, she brushed it off and said we'd discuss it once we got home. I agreed, believing we could work through anything together. I couldn't have been more wrong. 2 weeks after Thanksgiving, her company held their annual holiday party. I had planned to attend but came down with severe food poisoning. I insisted she should still go and enjoy herself. Her friend Rachel was the designated driver for the night, so I knew she'd be safe. While I was stuck in the bathroom all evening, I checked her location occasionally. Restaurant, party venue, bar, all normal. Then her location showed she was at a downtown hotel. My stomach dropped, and it wasn't from the food poisoning. When she came home the next day, I casually asked about her night. She mentioned the restaurant, the party, and the bar, then claimed she crashed at Rachel's place. It was the first direct lie she'd ever told me. Over the next 3 months, she started working late several nights a week. When I asked about it, she got defensive. One evening, when she was particularly late coming home, I called her mother. That's when I learned about her mother's suspicions from Thanksgiving. She thought her daughter might be cheating based on how she was acting. She also mentioned that their usual mother-daughter text conversations had become increasingly distant. Then I got assigned to a project in Chicago, 5 weeks of Monday to Friday travel, starting in 2 weeks. When I told her, she seemed unusually excited about it. That's when I decided to find out what was really happening while I was away. Before leaving for Chicago, I ordered 4 small security cameras from an online store. I put them around our apartment, living room, kitchen, bedroom, and hallway. They were tiny and connected to a private network, so they wouldn't show up on our regular Wi-Fi. I made sure everything was password protected and worked properly before I left. The first week away, nothing unusual happened. She had some friends over for movie nights, and that was it. But on the 3rd night of my 2nd week, I saw it. A man came to our apartment. I sat in my hotel room, watching them together on my laptop. The worst part? While they were together, I called her to check in. She actually paused what she was doing to answer the phone, telling me she was out of breath from the gym, then went right back to him when we hung up. When I got home that Friday, I couldn't even look at her. The next morning, I went for a bike ride to clear my head. I ended up riding almost 100 miles, the farthest I'd ever gone. That evening, we went out with friends, had drinks, and even slept together. The whole time, I felt like I was dying inside. She didn't notice anything was wrong, which hurt even more. I finally told my friend Mike what was happening. That's when I learned something that made everything worse. All our friends knew. They'd known for months, but hadn't said anything. That's why they'd slowly stopped inviting us to things. I hadn't even noticed we were being excluded until Mike pointed it out. I tried one last time to save things. The next weekend, I planned everything she loved. Fancy dinner, couples massage, wine tasting. After several glasses of wine, she started crying. I thought maybe she was finally going to confess. I told her I would listen to anything she needed to say, that we could work through it together. All she said was how much she loved me. Meanwhile, I had videos of her with that guy in our apartment 4 different times. Over the next 8 weeks, I recorded more than 40 hours of her with this guy. Her coworker, I found out later. She never worked late once while I was gone. Every weekend, I tried to be extra loving, hoping she'd come clean. Instead, she just grew more distant. Finally, I'd had enough. I made a plan to end things. First, I booked an expensive vacation to Jamaica for us. When she was excited about it, I pretended work needed me to cancel last minute. I told her to take a friend instead. When she didn't even act disappointed that I couldn't go, I knew I'd made the right decision. Then I put my plan in motion. I found a new job in San Francisco, arranged for movers, waited until she left for Jamaica. The day she flew out, I went straight to work. I packed up everything she owned, carefully and neatly. I cried the whole time, packing away 3 years of memories, things we'd bought together, photos of happier times. I made sure I had all her belongings and her share of our joint account money. I loaded everything into my truck and drove 800 miles to her parents' house in Portland. What happened when I got there wasn't what I expected at all. Her mother was waiting outside when I arrived, but something was wrong. She was crying before I even got out of the truck. When I asked what was happening, she broke down completely. Through her tears, she told me she thought her husband was cheating with a younger woman. All the signs were there. Late nights, mysterious trips, hidden phone calls. We went inside and talked. She showed me credit card statements, charges from expensive hotels when her husband claimed to be on fishing trips. Like mother, like daughter, I thought. I showed her the evidence I had about her daughter. We spent the next half hour crying together. What happened next with her mother changed everything. After we cried together, she opened a bottle of wine and asked if I wanted to join her by the pool. That night, and for the next 3 days, we found comfort in each other's pain. We did things I never imagined doing with my ex's mother. It was wrong, but we were both hurting so much. When I left Portland, I turned my phone off and drove straight to San Francisco to start my new life. Her mother kept me updated on what happened next. When my ex landed in Seattle, her calls wouldn't go through. The coworker she was seeing drove her to our old apartment, where strangers answered the door. She stayed with friends for a while, calling her mother in tears about where I'd gone. Her mother told her I'd dropped off all her things and her money, and that she knew about the affair. She didn't mention what happened between us. That would stay our secret forever. My ex took a week off work, apparently crying for days. But eventually, she went back to her married coworker for comfort. 6 months later, her mother visited me in San Francisco. We just talked this time. Both of us regretted what we'd done, but agreed it was best left in the past. She told me my ex knew she had my contact information but wouldn't share it. When my ex kept pushing, her mother threatened that if she tried to find me, all the evidence would end up online. It wasn't true. I would never do that. But it kept my ex from searching for me. Her mother also told me about her own marriage. Her husband had confessed everything when confronted. Unlike my ex, he seemed truly sorry and wanted to fix things. He gave her access to all his accounts and agreed to marriage counseling. When she told him she'd also been unfaithful, it shocked him into realizing what he'd almost lost. They separated briefly, but eventually decided to work on their marriage. As far as I know, they're still together today. My ex went to therapy after everything fell apart. She quit her job to avoid her married coworker and eventually found someone new. According to her mother, she's married now with twin daughters. I recently destroyed all the evidence I had about my ex. I asked her mother to let her know. I didn't want her living in fear of those videos getting out. It felt good to finally let go of that last bit of anger. Her mother and I still exchange short messages once or twice a year, just checking in. Sometimes I wonder if my ex and I could have fixed things like her parents did if I'd given her the chance. But I'll never know. Maybe it's better that way. My life now is different but good. I've moved past the anger and hurt. The only thing that still bothers me sometimes is how easily someone you trust completely can live a double life. But I try not to let that make me bitter. Everyone deserves a second chance, just not always with the same person. I've learned that sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. Sometimes it's about walking away and building a better life for yourself. That's what I did. And even though the path here was messy and painful, I don't regret where it led me. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share it with friends or family who might enjoy it too. Your support means a lot. And if you have any thoughts, questions, or story ideas, drop them in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. See you in the next story.